there's talk of, and it seems like there's always talk of, a ground operation that Israel will launch into Lebanon against Hezbollah. What do you make of this? Is this something that's going to happen? And if it does happen, what will occur?
Well, I'm always loath to make predictions because in order to make predictions, you have to, back when I was an intelligence officer, that was my job, to do predictive analysis. But I would only do that after I would, interrogate my boss to find out exactly what it is he wanted to know. And then based upon his direction, I would build an intelligence collection plan using the resources available to collect the various things, because I'd break down his direction into what we call essential elements of information, the specific pieces of knowledge we need to know, and then I'd collect on it. And then I would be able to evaluate each answer to the essential element of information based upon the quality of the intelligence that was derived from the collection plan. I would say, okay, this, I have an answer, but I'm not too confident in this answer because the source was a drunk prostitute who, claimed to have access she probably didn't have. Or I would say, I'm really confident in this one because we actually intercepted the phone call where they laid this thing out. This one, I'm being more confident because I got the document. And so you look all that, you weigh it in, factor it in, and say, okay, based upon the totality of this, I'll now do my analysis. And I will say that these are the top 5 possible, courses of action. And I'll rate them from most likely to least likely and explain to you why I did it. That's what I used to do for a living. And so here you've thrown something at me. Is Israel going to go into Lebanon? Well, I don't know. First thing I have to say is I don't know what's driving Netanyahu. I can guess what's driving Netanyahu. This is, I think, the 3rd time in recent history that he's threatened to launch a ground incursion into Lebanon. Each time, the Israeli military pushes back and says, we can't do it. We don't have the resources. It's a fight we're going to lose. The definition of an insanity is, expecting a different outcome, even though all the other factors are the same. So I am led to believe that Netanyahu is not serious about going into Lebanon, that this is posturing on his part. Then you have to ask yourself, why is he posturing? Who is he posturing to? Is he trying to intimidate Hezbollah? No. What he's trying to do is mollify a right-wing coalition, governing coalition, that refuses to accept peace as a possibility. Why? Because they're linked to Netanyahu, to his future, and his future is only guaranteed so long as Israel is in a perpetual state of conflict. The moment Israel accepts a ceasefire against Gaza, the moment they normalize the situation on the border with Lebanon, the Israeli people will say, well, we no longer need this ridiculous right-wing cabinet, and it's time to put in a new Israeli government. That means that Netanyahu's out. And if Netanyahu's out, he's not going to have the protection of politicized courts anymore, and he will be arrested and put on trial for corruption and maybe some other charges too as well. That's not the future that Netanyahu wants. This is all about Netanyahu. It has nothing to do with the legitimate national security concerns of Israel. If it did, there would have been a ceasefire a long time ago. The hostages would be home, and Israel would be, again, knowing Israel would be trying to buy time to get the world to forget about a 2-state solution. Israel would be courting Saudi Arabia to normalize relations. And once Saudi Arabia normalizes relations, the Gulf Arab states will fall in place. And then there will be no chance of a Palestinian homeland. That's what a Zionist should be doing. But Netanyahu can't because he failed on October 7th. It's a huge embarrassment to him. He has sacrificed Israel's military in Gaza, weakened it to the point that it can't do its primary mission of defending Israel from Hezbollah and from Iran. So there's a lot of posturing by Netanyahu while he tries to buy time. He's looking at, American elections, what's going to happen on November 6th. Who's going to win this election? That'll tell you a lot about which direction. Can he hold out till November 6th? But what does he have to do to hold out? We have hundreds of thousands of Israelis in the streets protesting against, Netanyahu, creating the conditions which hostages are being killed. They blame him for that, rightfully so. How does he stave off these hundreds of thousands by threatening to go to war against Lebanon, getting against Hezbollah, getting the Israelis distracted? So that's his game right now. He is literally just moving from one crisis to the next, and just keep things moving so that he remains at the center of power in Israel. The moment these pieces stop moving, he loses viability. He's going to leave. So I don't think Israel's going into Lebanon. I'd be foolhardy. The Hezbollah is ready for this. Hezbollah has made it clear that if Israel goes in, A, Hezbollah is going to crush them, and B, Hezbollah is going to counterattack, and the war is going to be fought in northern Israel, not in southern Lebanon.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know if you caught this. There was one of these many summits in Washington hosted by one of the many think tanks that do the business of thought leading these catastrophic wars. But an unnamed U.S. official, senior U.S. official who participated in what's called the Middle East America Dialogue, said recently at this summit that there's an idea, quote, let's go to war and then we will destroy all the missiles Hezbollah has and everything will be fine. It's not that simple. There's no magic solution. The other side cannot be annihilated at the end of the war. Israel may pay a heavy price and not achieve its goals. Scott, isn't that what has already happened in many respects?
Yeah, I mean, the first of all, understand that Israel versus Hezbollah is something Israel's been preparing for some time now. In 2022 and 2023, they ran major war games that talked about what would happen if we were attacked all at once on every possible front. The major front that Israel prepared for was Hezbollah. That's where the greatest threat comes from. And so, the Israeli army was coming into this battle fresh, with the fully 70% of their military capability committed to that fight, and they still didn't win in the exercise. Now we have today, one of the things that the exercise never conceived was what would happen if Hamas attacked Israel and compelled Israel to send 300,000 troops into Gaza for a year. No one ever thought about that. What would happen? Can you fight a war with Hezbollah when your army is exhausted, when you've run out of spare parts? The Israelis have never been configured to fight a war of this duration. Logistically, it's unsustainable. Emotionally, morally, physically, the Israeli military is absolutely worn down. So they have defeated themselves. I mean, they have created the conditions where they can't do what's necessary to achieve victory. If they were to start a fight with Hezbollah today, I think Hezbollah would unleash hell. I mean, it reminds me of that opening scene of Gladiator, when Russell Crowe's unleash hell and all the firebombs going up. Hezbollah would give you something similar to that, except it would be very precise, very targeted, very devastating. And then they'd followed up with a ground incursion into Israel. Yes, you heard me right. Hezbollah would pour in maybe 10, 20,000 troops who would seize Israeli towns, Israeli villages in the north, penetrate as deep into Israel as possible, and then force Israel to fight urban combat against Hezbollah forces dug in. So Israel would be destroying its own cities instead of destroying Lebanese cities. So, it's a mission impossible. So Israel's already defeated itself because it's incapable of meeting, the parameters for victory. They cannot get rid of the Hezbollah missiles. They cannot destroy the Hezbollah forces. They cannot drive Hezbollah north of the Litani River. They cannot defend the north of Israel.
Yeah, and I wanted to now ask you about comments made by Iranian Major General Hossein Salami. He said that, quote, the nightmare of Iran's decisive action shakes the enemy, Israel, day and night, and we see visible signs of the end of its political life. Scott, what have you made of now Iran's ongoing response, which seems to be a response to Israel's incursion into Tehran, murdering top Hamas, the former top Hamas negotiator? What have you made of its ongoing response? Because this has been the framing of it since for the last several now weeks and months.
Well, I mean, again, the Iranians, a lot like the Russians, think strategically, not tactically. Um, I mean, there's a lot of people out there saying, well, Israel crossed that red line when it assassinated the senior Hamas leader, that Iran now has to follow through with its pledge to retaliate decisively. And the fact that Iran isn't retaliating decisively has caused a lot of people to say, oh, look, they're bluffing. They can't do it. Iran's weak. They didn't mean it. Israel has deterrent supremacy. Let's back up just a little bit. What did Israel have to do to successfully defend itself against the Iranian attack in April? They had to bring in massive quantities of foreign assistance, American aircraft, British aircraft, who had to deploy in a way to blunt the Iranian attack by shooting down drones and cruise missiles, so that the Israeli surface-to-air missile dome, so to speak, the Iron Dome, Arrow 3, Jacob Sling, I think, or David Sling, I don't know. So they come in and these things can shoot things down. But that requires constant preparation. And so what the Iranian general is saying is, every day Israel wakes up not knowing that this is going to be the day that we're going to launch the attack. It's not just Israel waking up. The United States is waking up. We've deployed multiple carrier battle groups that are now deployed in a manner designed to serve as a shield to Israel. We're launching aircraft, and we have aircraft on alert so that we have to surge them into the airspace in Jordan to shoot down these missiles, or over the Red Sea to shoot missiles coming in from Yemen. This is a problem. There's reports that our carriers are only deployed, or only have 85% of the manpower needed, which means that the people on the carriers now, in order to maintain this high level of efficiency, aren't getting rest. They're becoming exhausted. And Iran hasn't launched everything. So now I'm the Iranians, and I'm sitting there going, all right, every day we're costing Israel and the United States X number of $1 million. We're exhausting them. They're not able to focus on other things. They're focusing on this. If we don't attack today and tomorrow rolls around, they'll have lost even more money. They'll get even more exhausted. We're winning without doing anything. And I think that's what the Iranian general is saying, is that merely putting Israel on this perpetual state of readiness for an attack that isn't manifested itself exhausts Israel. It eats up resources. It exhausts the United States. It eats up resources. Meanwhile, Iran continues to put pressure on Israel on all the other fronts. They're resupplying Hamas, probably through Egypt, probably through tunnels, but they're resupplying Hamas. Hezbollah continues to, fight effectively, incorporating new weapons coming in from Iran. The Houthi haven't been defeated. In fact, they continue to successfully blockade Israel's southern ports. They disrupt traffic going through the Suez Canal. It's been devastating to the Israeli economy, devastating to the Western economy. The diversion of ships around, South Africa, around Africa, costs millions of dollars a day. So if I told the Iranians that, hey, if you simply do nothing, you're going to bankrupt the enemy, they'd laugh at me, except that's literally the situation you face today. Iran doesn't have to launch this major attack. They're bankrupting Israel. They're exhausting Israel. They're exhausting the United States. And I don't know if Iran will ever attack. remember, Iran wants, they're a member of BRICS. They want this BRICS summit to succeed. One of the things that could cause BRICS to fail is if there's a general conflict, for instance, between Israel and Iran, Israel and Hezbollah, that is disruptive to, nations who otherwise would be at, in Kazan in October, working with Russia, China, and India to construct what in effect is a new world order, and built around the concept of multipolarity as opposed to sustaining American singularity.
Yeah, there's nothing more disruptive than an entire region engulfed in maybe a war that has not been seen in any generation that is currently alive at the moment. Should something like that occur, should Iran and Israel find themselves in direct conflict. And, this gets me to maybe to close on the Middle East, this recent talk of Russia, Iran, ballistic missiles, because it seems to be another excuse to level more sanctions on Iran. And there seems to be a dual purpose here, making up excuses through Iran and Russia's military partnership to both allow Ukraine to strike in long range form on Russia, and to increase sanctions on Iran in the hopes that it will not escalate any situation in the region, which is guaranteed. I think, as you said, Scott, I think all your points were true, but also to what in the end of the day is an agenda of the United States, large sections of its political elite, to weaken Iran and destroy Iran, and of course the rest of the axis of resistance. What has been your reaction to this talk of Russia and Iran and the exchange of ballistic missiles to Russia?
Well, I mean, first of all, we know that Russia and Iran have a strategic relationship that has a heavy militarized component. They signed a secret deal with secret annexes, a little more than a month ago. We know that Iran has collaborated with Russia on the provision of, specific drone technologies, up to and including the ability to manufacture these drones in Russia. So the idea that people go, it's ludicrous. The Russians and the Iranians would never cooperate in this level. They are. Now you have to say, well, okay, why would Russia want a specific family of Iranian missiles? We're talking about a surface-to-surface missile with a range of around 70, 75 miles. Well, Russia has transformed the way that it supports its troops in battle in terms of firepower support. They've learned from the realities of modern war, this attritional warfare. They've studied how the Ukrainians operate. They know that what the Ukrainians do doctrinally in terms of having a position, holding the position, and seeking to rotate troops out. So you'll hold the position, you'll bring in the rotation forces, you'll get them ready, they'll surge forward, bring out the other troops who will then go back. So the Russians have seen this. They see patterns of behavior. They understand templating of the battlefield, where the likely assembly areas will be based upon past practice. Then they'll have a drone overhead looking, and they see indicators that the troops are starting to assemble. They need to strike that right now. The weapon of choice to do this can be one of these fab bombs with the wings, or what they can use are Iskander missiles. The Iskander has a longer range. It can strike deeper into Russia or into Ukrainian territory, but it's also capable of hitting this, targets at the, 75, 50-mile range. The Iskander used to be held at the army level. What the Russians have done now, in the way that they've reconfigured their approach to war, maximizing firepower, is they've taken, Iskander formations at the army level, and they've broken it down and have dedicated detachments down to the brigade level. So a brigade commander now can call in fire with the Iskander missiles. Very effective, very deadly, devastating to Ukrainians. But when you increase the potential for use of Iskanders, you increase the actual expenditure of the ammunition, and don't be surprised when your tactics consume more munitions than your industry is capable of producing. The Iskander missile is produced at the Vodkinsk machine building plant, probably using old SS-23 lines or lines that have been converted. They could possibly modify some of the production lines that produce CNC machine tools. Why do I say that? Because it comes down to, man hours used in the process, the similarity of processes. And when I did a paper when the Cold War when ended about the convertibility of the Vodkinsk machine building plant, and one of the things was taking these missile assembly lines that had been used on SS-23s or SS-12 scale boards, and how do you convert them to civilian use? And you have to look at the manpower, man hours, all the things, similarity of production processes to see if there is the possibility of convertibility. And then if it does, then you retrain troops. The point I'm trying to make is, I think the Vodkinsk machine building plant is maxed out on its ability to produce Iskanders. It's a high demand item, and the Vodkinsk machine building plant is maxed out. Russia still has a need for these long range strike systems. So they either build a new factory, a new machine building plant, which is very expensive to do, isn't going to happen overnight, or they buy a similar system straight off the market from a provider they trust. Iran has a system that does precision strike up to 75 miles deep. So what Russia is going to do is buy a bunch of these. I think that the talk is 200 initially. I'm sure it'll be more. And if it's something Russia likes, then Russia will simply retool and make it on their own at a different plant. But the point is, Russia is now going to be able to, without skipping a beat, maximize firepower potential at the front line at a moment when the Ukrainians desperately need the Russians not to do this. Ukraine is on the breaking point. Their military is losing men. They can't replace them. They don't have reserves. They don't have the equipment. They're stressed, stretched everywhere. The last thing they need is for the Russians not only to sustain the level of firepower that they're able to bring to bear on the battlefield, but increase it by bringing in, Iranian capability that can fall in directly. The Russian troops are already being trained on it. They're going to come in, fall in, and start employing it. They have the operations already worked out. They've incorporated a fire plan. So these things are going to come straight in, and the Russians are just going to seamlessly continue to press on. That's my theory. And it makes so much sense that I'm convinced that Iran has, in fact, provided Russia with these missiles. And that's just the way it is. It's hypocrisy for the West to go, oh, you can't do that. Right. Good Lord, you gave them ATACMS, you gave them HIMARS, you gave them Abrams, you gave them Leopard, you gave them Challenger, you gave them F-16s, you've given them everything. And now Iran gives Russia, missiles, and apparently that's the greatest sin on the planet.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.